Hi, welcome. Today I would like to talk about UI design and how it is currently being used on various platforms. So, if I look at the web, if you're designing a web app, basically you would need to know HTML and CSS primarily for UI design and for event handling and more complex uh, things you would need JavaScript. And what I have found over many years is that there are a lot of people who know HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, and they basically design their user interfaces and not really use any what I would call builders or UI builders, for example. That's not very common, or at least that's my observation. So, in fact, what is happening here is that the human beings or designers or programmers they know HTML and CSS very well, and they can just basically build the whole thing, the user interface, without really knowing designers. But if you look at some of the other platforms, at least in my observation, is not very correct. So if you go, for example, building a UI app in Windows, you will basically use Visual Studio and the Visual Studio Designer, and most of the UI can be designed using Designer, and it will output essentially XML. And there are not that many people you will find, in my experience, who would be very familiar with the XML that gets generated by the builder and how you position various elements and things. So the output of this is essentially, as far as the UI is concerned, XML based. If you go to Android, for example, most people would use Android Studio Designer to design their UI, and the output of this is also actually XML based. And if you go into iOS, you use Xcode Designer, and output of this is also XML. And especially if you look at the JavaFX, for example, there is a scene builder for that, and most people would probably use that scene builder, and the output of this is also XML. So what strikes me, at least in my observation, is that pretty much if you look at any other platform other than the web, most of those other platforms, people do use designers quite frequently, and they are not very familiar with the underlying XML that gets generated. So that's just my observation. Let me know what you think about this, and what is the state of the art in essentially designing user interfaces. Thank you for watching this short screencast, and I'll put this video on my website under Gore Associates. And you have a great day.